should never overdose is prohibit, like you're using, Bobby, because you can kill sheep by overdosing prohibit. It's the only dewormer that I'm aware of that has that capability. So if you're using Valvazin, Safeguard, Ivermec, Sidectin, all drenches, there's a margin of safety built into those dewormers. Okay, good question. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, they're a limited resource, right? Drugs are a limited resource, and so we're going to go to the next section. My goodness, you guys are really asking good questions. Here, we've talked about all these. Here's the 3 families. These are long names, but just remember the white wormers, the ivermectin type of dewormers, and the prohibit. These are the levanasols here. Levanasols are probably, in general, the ones that are least resistant, or the worms are least resistant, only because people don't use them that much, because they're kind of a pain. They're coming to powder. You have to rehydrate them, and they do have the problem of overdosing. So Valvazin and Safeguard, they're probably the ones that we most use. They're also probably the ones that are probably going to be the worms are most resistant to them. Ivermectin, in the southeast, ivermectin is as good as water. It doesn't work. You know, I talk to those guys in the southeast and I say, well, we used Ivermec. Most people use Ivermec now once the Valvazin doesn't work, and they say, ah, that doesn't work. Well, it does work up here still, fortunately.
You said that you already said this, I just wasn't paying attention, I guess. Like tapeworm and stuff, like because the prohibit, does that
I don't think. I know Valvazin and Ivermec get tape.
Yeah, so that if I'm using, because I quit using Valvazin,
did it work?
If I have tapeworm, should I use Valvazin once a year?
I wouldn't worry about tapes, Bobby. They're not hurting your sheep a bit. They just look terrible. It's been proven over and over again that tapeworms don't have any productive impact on sheep. Really, since you're on prohibit now, I'd keep going on prohibit until if and when it quits, and then I'd switch to your Ivermec or your Sidectin. Ivermec and Sidectin are in the same family. They just have a little bit different mode of action. But so if your ivermectin quits on you for a while, your Sidectin will work, but not very much.
Well, I was using Sidectin and it didn't really.
Your Sidectin didn't work?
Or Valvazin.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, you don't have a choice then. What you got to learn how to do is graze to control and start breeding for resistance among sheep. Okay. Okay. We've kind of discussed this, but we better talk about it again. Extra label drugs. These are the drugs that you have to have a veterinary prescription to use, like injectable Sidectin. In the sheep industry, we do enjoy consumers like us, okay? Because lamb is starting to get really the thing to eat if you're in San Francisco or Seattle, you know. So the last thing that we don't want to do as an industry is become known as people that just give their animals a whole bunch of antibiotics indiscriminately deworm. We don't want that. I mean, the cattle industry and the hog industry are, yeah, you cannot go against the label. Just don't do it, because we as a sheep industry, it reflects on us. Somebody's going to find out. You know, and if we get enough people doing it, then we have a problem. And right now, we enjoy the consumer trust, and that's where we want to keep it. So we have a good situation that we want to keep. Okay, we talked about combination dewormers. We did. Yeah, there we go. This is the research. Here we got one drug. It's 80% effective on the drench right test or the fecal 8 count reduction test. They combined it with another one that was 80% effective. Look what happens when you combine the two, 96%. The definition of an effective drug is it kills 95% of the parasites, worms. Okay. Hopefully in Montana, we're a long ways from that. That's why we're giving these workshops, you know, how to create refugia, how to deworm correctly. So,
you're not talking about two of the same class. You're
no.
talking about two different classes.
Two different classes. Like this would be Valvazin, and this would be probably ivermectin. Okay, so two distinct classes, not using valvazin and safeguard, because they're the same class. It would not work for that. Okay, next please. Okay, we've talked a little bit about this, diatomaceous earth, garlic, wormwood, papaya, tobacco. Tobacco kills everything, right? These go back to your question, Michelle. If they work for you, fine. But realize there's a risk in finding out if they work for you, because you might lose some animals. Okay, so research suggests or does more than suggest. They will tell you none of these things work. Okay? And they got a lot of data behind it that substantiates that. Okay, next please. Okay, now we're getting to the last three tools. We'll go through them quickly, but got any questions, please ask. The one that I like the most is grazing to control, because we have direct experience with this on our farm. In 2009, when we determined that valvazin no longer worked, we thought, man, we got to do something different than just using dewormers to control this worm. And so we turned to changing our grazing practices. And what we had been doing was, since we had milk cows, we needed to get a lot of milk out of those cows. We grazed vegetative grass. It was only 18 inches tall. And it was running 25% protein and 62, 63% TDN. And for pasture, that's a reasonably good ration for dairy. So we just figured when we sold the milk cows and went to sheep, we thought, if it's good enough for milk cows, it's going to be super for sheep. Right? We couldn't have been more wrong, because what we were doing to get the grass just 18 inches high, we were on 22-day rest periods for that grass. So every 22 days, we would be grazing a paddock. And we, with the milk cows, we changed the cows twice a day. Every milking, they got into a new grazing paddock. So that stimulated appetite, which gave us more milk. When we did the sheep, we backed that down to 1 day. We moved them every day. But in 22 days, they were back to where they started. And it just so happens, if you draw a curve of the Barber Pole population cycle, every 22 days it peaks. So for 5 years, we hit the peak of every Barber Pole population. I mean, we could not have been doing it more wrong if we tried. We did, and that's why we had to deworm every month. So, the 3 rules are: give them 35 to 40 days of pasture rest, and rotate your pastures on that. Don't graze lower than 6 to 8 inches, and get out of there in 4 days. So your paddock grazing periods need to be 4 days or less. And what that does, that addresses that part of the Barber's Pole cycle where it takes 4 days to 9 days from the egg to hatch the larvae and the larvae to crawl up on the leaf. Now, all these rules have to be taken with a grain of salt in everybody's individual farm situation, okay? These rules work really good for us because we know we are in the red light zone for parasites, okay? Now, someone who has less sheep on a given acre, you may not have to be this stringent, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, even though I've had a conversation with my sheep about grazing the whole pasture instead of focusing in one area and grazing it down the back, they do it, right?
Right.
So, and if your pasture is configured in such a way so you have slope and such, that you can't really fence it and move them. But it's, like I have 18 acres, including a slope, and maybe 60, sheep, including lambs, on it. Is that enough room?
And you're irrigated, right?
Irrigated.
Yeah.
Not all of it is irrigated.
Right.
Only the flat section is irrigated.
Yeah. You guys, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to be brutal, okay?
Yeah.
There is no reason why you cannot divide your pastures into lots of paddocks with nets.
Okay, so you're going to review that with us.
Yeah, I'll do that. Well, You know, sheep nets are great because they don't get out. As long as there's electricity in the net, you got to plug it in. You can't forget. I've done that a million times. Okay? As long as there's power in the net, your sheep will not get out, and the dogs and the coyotes will not get in. That, if everything's working right, that will happen. So if what you can do, even if you've got 16 sheep or 1,600 sheep, you can move at least every 4 days. You just make your paddocks size so that they're going to eat down to 6 to 8 inches in 4 days. Okay, so am I kind of on track to answer?
Yes, and you've answered it.
Okay, yeah. You know,
So it's a fencing issue.
it's a fencing issue. And the thing that goes along with fencing, and sometimes it's harder than fencing, is water. You've got to figure out how to get stock water to those sheep in as many paddocks as you're going to take to go every 4 days. We have 43 paddocks in our 30 acres. And they're all temporary fenced with nets. And so we have just arranged our water lines, and we're not talking buried water lines. All our stock water line is a 3/4 inch black poly pipe. And it lays right on top of the ground because I figured out really soon I'm not smart enough to figure out where to put stock water if I bury that pipe, right? So I just forgot all that, and I put the pipe right on top of the ground. And over the years, wherever I needed the stock water, my stock water consists of a 30-gallon barrel cut in half with a hose connected to it. And I just screw that barrel into my main line with a hose bib. And I've got a stock water station. If I need another one, I take a hacksaw and cut it where I need it and put the insert in and the ball faucet, and I have a new stock wiring station. I have probably 25 different stock wiring stations on 32 acres. If I was to start, think, oh, where should I put one? I'm going to bury this line because NRCS says that's the way to do it. You know, I probably would have come up with 6. And I would have been forever getting out there with a backhoe because I needed one here. So the only drawback to an above line system is it's black poly pipe. It can heat up, right? Okay. But if you're grazing, so you're leaving the 6 to 8 inches, that shades that line and it really helps that. Also, sheep don't need a whole lot of water, right? Compared to cows. They're a desert animal. And so you can run a lot of sheep on a small water. I mean, that's 30-gallon barrel cut in half. I can pick right up. It's got a 5-foot hose extension on it. I just walk wherever I want to walk. So it's really sheep are very well adapted to this system. And the other thing is, if it's really hot and if the black poly is exposed somewhere, I know it's going to be a problem. It's going to be hot water that sheep aren't going to like. I just take the float off and just turn it up so it runs continuously, maybe a quarter or half a gallon a minute. And it's not hurting anything. It's going right back to my well anyway, through the ground. So, and actually, I just completely did away with the float. I just always just let a little bit of water go out. It makes the water nice and cool. Sheep love it. Problem solved. Yeah. So, water is probably a bigger problem for putting a lot of paddocks in your temporary paddocks in your pasture than the net is, or the fencing is, because you can do tons of stuff with an electric net. Only thing you got to do, if you're in irrigated pasture, the grass is, say, maybe this tall, and you put your net in, you find out it grounds the net out, right? Because it's touching the grass. Okay. So there's 2 solutions. You can walk backwards as you place your net and make a trail. You can take your quad and make the trail first. That takes a little more time, but you can do that. Or you can spend the money to get a more powerful charger. And that's what we did. We fooled around with 6-joule and 12-joule chargers for 20-some years. And after losing 20-some lambs that got caught in the net because there was not enough fear in them, I finally broke down and bought a $1,400 36-joule charger, and I've been a happy camper ever since. Because it's got enough power in the thing where those lambs they no longer test it. And if you ever watch sheep, the older ewes tell the young lambs, go touch that fence every hour and just see if it's still on. And if it's still on and it knocks that lamb backwards, they don't test it anymore. And they don't put their heads through it and get strangled in it. And
So electric shock therapy.
electric shock there. I wish I would have applied it to myself 25 years ago. You know? That's really, you just have to have enough fear in that fence. Yes, Amy?
I've screwed around with the solar chargers for
Mhm.
years and I've had so many problems. Have you ever been able to get a solar charger that have a good charge and last for more than half a season?
Yeah, the solar chargers are good, but they're limited from right off the bat. The ones that you can buy, I don't think there's a heavier, dutier one than 6 joule. You can't buy them. They don't make them that big, except maybe in Australia or New Zealand. Those two countries are way ahead of the United States. They take a look at our fencing systems and just laugh. But what happens on solar is that they're, you know, like typically you buy a 2 joule or a 3 joule. Those are the biggest ones you can buy in your feed store or your fencing store. So right off the bat, that thing doesn't have enough power to go through green grass. So that's the first thing that's wrong. So if you do use a solar one, you almost have to, some people take a mower and mow a strip, so it's only 4 inches high or so, stick their nets in there. Some people use a quad and go over it a couple of times so it's beat down. But if you have grain grass touching that fence, it's going to short out more prone to short out. And what you do is you just buy the fence tester, and there's a couple things you really need. First of all, you need a fence tester that's not one of those 5 light things. Okay. I may do with one of those things for another 20 years too. And if I had to do it all over again, I would just throw that thing away and start and get a digital. Because a digital fence tester will tell you a lot more exactly than a light bulb going off 5 times. So it's going to tell you what the exact reading is. And for sheep, you need 5,000 volts in that fence. Not 3, not 2, 5. If it's not 5, I almost guarantee you that sometime, somewhere, some lamb's going to get stuck in that fence and you know, or they're going to get out. Or coyotes are going to get in. So you need 5,000 volts in there. And one of the problems you can have with fencers is your ground rods. That's a very common problem. So you take that fence tester and you stick the lead in the earth, in the dirt, and then you put the other end on your ground rod, okay, and you turn the fencer on, and if there's more than 0.3 kilovolts that's registering on that fence tester, remember lights aren't going to tell you this, it's got to be a digital readout, you don't have enough ground rods in there. So I almost bet you that might be your problem.
Yeah. Well, and when you're dividing it into, like, I've got like 30 paddocks. So that takes like,
30?
Yeah, that takes
Look at
like,
Amy, see, she can do it.
It's like 12 different ground rod setups. And so
Yeah.
that, like, my time is like, oh my god, if I go from 7 to 4 day paddocks, I'm just gonna be like ground rod money my whole life.
Well, are you permanently putting your ground rods in and leaving them there? Why can't you just?
No, 'cause I just
Yeah, if you move them, you know, the most ground rods of 3. I don't use the 6-foot ground rods in a solar system. I use 3-footers because you can take them out.
Oh, okay.
So use 3-footers and then connect them with galvanized 10-gauge high tensile wire and make sure they're 10 feet apart from each other. If you put them real close together like a foot, that's the same as one ground rod in that place. So put them 10 feet apart. Yeah. Yeah. And then you can quit putting ground rods in once you get less than 0.3 kilovolts. When you plug your thing in the ground and the other on that, that's the magic number. If you got 1.0, you're not grounded well enough. And it's amazing. You can go from 3,000 volts in your net to 5,000 volts just from going from 1.0 kilovolts in your ground rod system to 0.3. And if you have rocky ground, almost all the time you're going to have more ground rods. So grounding system is just as important as the charger itself, because if you don't have a good grounding system, the power doesn't get from the sheep's foot through the ground back to your charger. It's kind of a fuzzy circuit. So grounding is very important.
Out of curiosity, how much of your time do you spend moving your sheep?
Great question. Yeah.
Is that the next slide?
No, it isn't. You hit on board there, Amy. We kind of have designed our line fences, our perimeter fences, so that we don't have, and these are permanent woven fences, we don't have to use any more than 3 nets to make a temporary fence boundary. So that was on purpose, because I just hate moving more than 3 nets at a time. You know? So we can, if we have our paddocks, we try to make them as square as possible. So here's our back fence here, and here's our front fence, and the sheep are in here. We can take up yesterday's back fence, and which is 3 nets, and then put it for today's front fence that we're going to move over here, and move the sheep in 35 minutes. So,
Twice. How often do you move them?
pardon?
How often do you move your sheep?
We move them every day. Yeah, so we have 35 minutes out of every day that we move the sheep and make a new paddock and move the sheep. It takes us 34 and a half minutes to make the fence and 30 seconds to move the sheep.
How many of you?
Pardon?
How many people?
Just one, just me.
And a dog.
Nope, no dog.
A dog.
Nope. We have a stock dog, but it takes longer to get him out into the into the pasture. To move the sheep, all I do is call them. And it's like pouring water down a funnel.
Yeah.
They go through that gate and they're in there.
I know,
It's
right?
less than 30 seconds.
Might see me at a gate and they're already at a gate going, oh.
Right, yeah.
Oh.
Which is
I'm like, oh no, I'm just here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a really good point. Yeah. So what you do to counteract that is whenever you move the sheep, set the next day's fence or the next move's fence right then and there, because they're busy eating the fresh grass and they're not thinking about you moving the fence. You know, if you always wait to move the fence to the new paddock right when they need it, they go aha, and they get anxious, and they might kind of get over anxious and go through the fence on you. So if you can, always move make your next paddock when you move your present paddock. The other thing that does, if they should get out, most sheep know where the grass is good and know where they went, have gone before. So if they get out, they're going to get out into the fresh paddock that you've already fenced them out in. So it saves you a whole bunch of trouble chasing sheep over your whole place. They're just right where you're going to put them the next day or the next move. So.
Well, I left my gate open one day, and I took a nap. And I was always afraid that they would take off. Well, they just kind of meandered through the pasture, went up through the gate, and then they went back to the barn.
Yeah, there you go. Trained sheep. Yeah. And which gives a very good takeoff on that. The more you work with the sheep, the tamer they get, the more they know what they're supposed to do, and the more they do it. So, working with sheep just has lots of benefits.
I hate to be the slow kid.
No.
but Just, so what you basically have is 2 days worth of fencing. So if you don't remove more than 3, you have like 6 fences. So you're setting up today's stuff, then you're opening up the partition, moving them over, and closing it off. Because I spend half my day chasing sheep when I'm trying to move them from pen to pen.
I've done that too, Amy. I spent many years
I'm
chasing
ready
sheep.
to go to cattle at that
Do
point.
they not look for food? When in doubt, shake a little grain. Do they
Yeah.
not, like,
No.
I mean,
What
my,
kind of sheep do you have?
Defiant.
That's the problem.
What are they? Suffolks?
Yes.
Hams? Okay. Well,
Suffolk Lake.
in the order of sheep tameness and less stress on the shepherd, Suffolks, I hate to say, but they're at the top, the most stressful. Hams are a little bit down. White-faced sheep, they're a lot easier to handle because they've been bred to herd. So you don't scatter like water out in the pasture like Suffolks do. But even that, we had Suffolks, and the sequel was why we got rid of Suffolks is because they were too hard to keep in. But if you work with your sheep, even Suffolks, they calm down, you know. But really, if you have an electric net, it's going to stop at Suffolk, you know.
I'm with Amy, there's not enough horsepower in it to stop.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they know the second I
Exactly.
forget it,
Yeah. It's just like getting on a horse and you don't know how to ride a horse. That horse knows. Those sheep know there's not enough power in that fence, and they're not afraid of it. But if they're fearful of that fence, 90% of your problems go away. So just get a charger that for your given situation keeps 5,000 volts in there, and I guarantee you, you'll have a lot less problems. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, you can break them. Put them in a corral that's a solid walled corral. Put your fence in the inside and let them figure it out. You know, especially if you have sheep if you get sheep that have never been used to electric fence, don't put them out there without doing it in a corral first, because they'll learn, but they'll go through it before they learn. So, yeah.
They're smarter than you think.
Yeah, they're smart. The other thing is, some people get away with using polywire, 3 strands of polywire to keep sheep in. We haven't, but really what it depends on is the breed of sheep, how they've been handled before, and the stocking density. If you have a large stocking density of sheep, polywire won't work, because there's too many sheep putting too much pressure on that fence. If you have sheep spread out a lot, polywire will keep them in. But we'll keep dogs in, we'll keep coyotes in, we'll keep wolves out. Bears, no. That's why nets are so nice, especially for smaller producers, because we can all take the time to meet the net. You know, if you got 1,000 acres, it's a different situation. Yeah.
My last question, I hope. If you have 30 some odd paddocks that you're working with, are you able to provide shade?
No.
So that's not an issue for your sheep?
Yeah, the question is, especially on a hot summer day like this, do we provide shade for our sheep? We don't. My opinion is, and what I've seen with our sheep is, they evolved in the desert. They're a desert animal. They don't need the shade. Plus, think about what happens if you put shade out there. They all get in the shade, they all poo in the shade, and the parasites all grow in the shades, and they usually eat in the shade. So they're eating all kinds of barber pole worms that you've just made them deposit there. That's why I don't like shade. I assure the sheep, you know, make sure that they're as comfortable as I can, but on pasture, I feel shade, at least, you know, if you had nights that were 80 and 90 degrees and days that were 100 degrees, I think I'd have to change my tune. You know, I'd have to provide some shade out there. But think about it, in Montana, we have a great resource. We have the best grass in the country. It's cool season grass. It grows like crazy. It's very nutritious. And we have nights that get down in the 50s. I mean, sheep can take a daytime of 90 degrees, 80 degrees, if they're allowed to cool down for several hours at night. So I don't think we're losing any production out of our lambs or out of our ewes by not providing shade. The one thing you can do, have you guys seen these portable shade things? It's called Shade Haven.
Yeah.
Where it's a big,
You drag it?
yeah, you drag it. That might work. Yeah. It's one more thing you have to do a day.
Yeah.
You know, but you could drag it and move it every day. So
But you wouldn't want grass under it? Oh, well, I guess
you
it wouldn't
move
be
it
a
every
problem.
day, it wouldn't matter.
Okay.
I think you could get by just fine.